All right, we're in a series called Good News. We're in the Gospel of Mark. We're going to be in Mark chapter 5 this morning. If you have a Bible, and of course you have a Bible because we're in church, we're going to talk about the most common miracle that Jesus performs in the New Testament. What do you think it is? Not everybody at once. It's not healing. You would think it's healing. It's casting out demons. In the New Testament, Jesus heals 42 times. Now, there are times when it says that he healed all who came or he healed all who brought, but there's 42 times it mentions Jesus healing. 55 times it talks about Jesus casting out demons. There is no way we can get through the New Testament or the Gospel of Mark without dealing with the reality of unclean spirits and demonic activity. If we did, we wouldn't be doing God's word justice. We wouldn't be taking it for what it says. But we don't like to talk about that stuff, even though the New Testament mentions Satan and demonic forces 250 times, which equals once per chapter in the New Testament. When was the last time it came up in a conversation at our house? C.S. Lewis has a great quote about this. He says, "There are two equal and opposite errors into which our race, human race, don't write me an email, can fall about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence. The other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. Which one do you think our country falls into?" Demons, they expired, right? I think they ran out right about when Jesus left town. You think Satan just packed it up and went in? I don't think so. However, I know this can be difficult to talk about. I know it can be confusing, and I know people instantly want to put up shields. So don't take my word for it. Let's just see what Scripture says. But the title of this sermon is Jesus Sets People Free from Demonization and Their Lies Which Hold Captive. There are spiritual forces at work lying to you. It's happening in the world. It's happening in the church family, and it's happening in your soul. Don't think for a minute that you're somehow immune to the attacks of the enemy. There are things that we believe that are outright lies. And the things that we believe, we give power to. So, the old saying, if you think you can or think you can't, you're probably right? There's like some benefit of some good, healthy self-talk, and I can do it, and I'm good enough, and I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. No 1980s Saturday Night Live fans. That's okay. The things that you believe, you give power to. So we're going to look in Mark chapter 5. We're going to begin right in verse 1. They came to the other side of the sea. If you read Mark chapter 4, if you were here last week, it was a story where Jesus calms a storm. They were coming across the lake. A great storm kicked up. Jesus calms the storm, and now this is the end of this. This is most likely very early in the morning. They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. These are just non-Jewish people. So these are Gentiles. They don't believe in the Jewish faith, but Jesus has crossed the lake to try to get away, to create some space. And when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately they were met out of the tombs, a man with an unclean spirit. Now, if you read this same story in Matthew, Matthew says there were two men. If you read the same story in the Gospel of Luke, Luke says he was naked. And this is where skeptics will say, well, see, the Bible has contradictions built right into it. How can you believe a book when you've got three stories and they're told differently? Well, it's just three perspectives. There were probably two men. He was probably naked. Mark's not giving us all the details. Mark's going to talk about the one guy who speaks. He's not going to talk about the second guy. I don't have any problem reading those three stories synonymously, that Mark's focusing on one guy. Matthew tells us there was two. Luke gives us a little more detail that makes me uncomfortable. But the number of men, or the wardrobe of what they were or weren't wearing, isn't really the point of the story. It's interesting. If the Bible weren't so carefully preserved, we would just change it. If you were trying to be manipulated by Scripture, then the writers of Matthew, Mark, and Luke would just say, hey, everybody write two. Everybody write they were naked. There, good. Now it's all the same. But the Bible is carefully preserved through time that even something like what we would call an apparent contradiction comes right through, which only makes me believe in the truth of the Bible more. There's my side for biblical inerrancy. Very early in the morning, they come off the boat, and just like you guys want, first thing in the morning is some guy running at you naked, screaming at you. I mean, who needs coffee, right? This guy lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart, and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. Sounds like somebody I want to hang out with. Jesus sets people free from demonization, and lies. The more you believe a lie, the stronger it becomes. And at some point, you have to recognize truth and break the power of the lie, or that lie is going to dominate you. And the more lies you believe, the harder it is to hear truth. Lies can be so strong that even normal behavior and normal relationships aren't possible. I mean, if I back up a slide, this guy lives among the tombs. He's living in a cemetery. Something's not right. You ever been to a cemetery? Did you ever think, hey, babe, let's sell the house, buy a couple plots right here. We could build. No, there's something going on. Like, no one could bind him anymore. At some point, they've tried to bind him with chains. He's breaking them off. He's unusually strong. He's running around screaming and crying and literally cutting himself with stones. Why is he chained up? I mean, what would it take for you to chain up somebody of your own family? Well, they'd have to be pretty angry and abusive, and for our protection, for your protection, we got to get you to stop doing this. We don't do that today. We just load them up with antidepressants and get them in a vegetative state. But that's because we don't have demons today, right? Behavior's abnormal. Relationships are abnormal. People are living in fear of him. Clearly, he's in fear of them. He has so far removed himself that he's just going to go live at the cemetery where nobody's going to hang out. And he's not in his right mind. He's living among the tombs. This is an unclean man living in an unclean place. So for Jewish readers, they would see he's a Gentile. He's living among tombs. No God-fearing Jew would go hang out with Gentiles. They wouldn't go live among tombs. All of that is unclean. He's crying out and shouting. He's tormented. He's not crazy. He's not crazy. He's tormented. He's being lied to. He's being abused by these spirits. I'm not saying everybody who yells and screams and acts crazy is being tormented, but this guy for sure is. He's cutting himself. That's a new thing, right? Kids cutting themselves? It's not. In fact, way back in Leviticus, it talks about you shouldn't cut yourself as you're worshiping other gods. When Elijah was arguing with the prophets of Baal on top of the mountain, he said, I'll call down fire from heaven from my God. You call down fire from heaven from your gods. And the God who answers with fire, that'll be the God. And for hours, the prophets of Baal shouted and yelled and cut themselves. This idea of people cutting themselves is not new. How many times did this guy's family sit and reason with him? What's the matter with you? Can't you control your temper? Can't you just knock it off? Can't you act normal? Till finally they decided to tie him up, chain him up, for his own protection, for our protection. And then this guy is living with this lie that everyone's trying to get over on me, hurt me, or control me. That's why they treat me this way. They're trying to control me. They're trying to manipulate me. And that's putting distance between him and his family. This is a lie. People who love you aren't trying to get over on you. They're not trying to hurt you. They're not trying to control you. It's a lie. It's not real. Don't believe it. Jesus sets people free from lies about healing. We often think, well, we're not going to get any better. People who turn to self-harm, whether it's physical or emotional, they think, well, this will make me better. This will help. I'll start a relationship. That'll cheer me up. I'll try this legal, illegal substance. That'll cheer me up. This will make me better. But that's a lie too. It continues. The other one we hear all the time is, I can treat or numb my emotional pain with physical pain. This is why they're cutting. Because it hurts. And they can't process the pain that's in their heart. But if they can process the pain that's on their arm or their legs, if I can hurt myself, if I can do something, I can feel. But that doesn't treat emotional pain. These are lies, and they hold people in bondage. I can heal myself through pain. Why do you do the things you do? Why do you go the places you go? Why do you trust the people you trust? You know how that's going to end up. Because we believe lies. And then it becomes shame. And shame will lie to you. See, shame says, there's something very wrong with me, and I need to fix it. This is what shame says. There's something wrong with you, and you need to fix it. So go to the self-help section. Go sign up for a YouTube class. Go watch a video where a guy tells you you can do it and everything you need is inside of you. There might be something wrong. It might not be wrong with you. It might be something you believe. And at some point, you're going to have to recognize that you can't fix it. You're not the answer to your own problems. I would imagine this guy was struggling with self-worth. A lot of people do. They feel unlovable. But Jesus says in John 15, there is no greater love than this, that someone would lay his life down for his friends. Jesus calls us his friends. People believe the lie that they deserve to be punished. But Romans 5:8 says that Jesus took our punishment. We believe the lie that we have to distract from emotional pain. Whatever will take our mind off the hurt. But Isaiah 53 says, by his stripes you are healed. By his wounds. All of your infirmities, physical, emotional, spiritual. We struggle with how to relieve stress. 1 Peter 5:7 says, cast all of your anxieties on him, for he cares for you. This non-suicidal self-injury thing is nothing new. It's been going on for a long time. Now, before you say, you'd have to be pretty messed up to believe some of these lies. I mean, you have to be pretty dumb to hurt yourself. How bad do you got to be to buy into a lie that self-destructive behavior will make you feel better? Just think when the last time you thought, if I eat this, if I smoke this, if I drink this, if I watch this, if I engage in this, I'll feel better. Did you? Or did it hurt worse? Now you're angry at yourself because you did exactly what you knew wasn't going to work. This is a lie. It's a flat out lie. And we fall for it all the time. And then we look down on the people who struggle with addiction or deep emotional pain because we're not that dumb. But I'll just get out of bed and I'll get something to eat and then I'll feel better. It's a lie. Who's the father of lies? Satan's the father of lies. That's where lies come from. Can we recognize where lies come from and stop pretending like it's all social pressure? You're being lied to. And we buy into these things. This isn't the first time Jesus has cast out a demon. It's not the first time he's going to heal somebody. He healed a leper, for crying out loud. He's dealt with marginalized people before. People that we would normally say, well, just get that guy away from me. And you know what? Let's keep him away from our children. That's why we have to seclude these people. It's for the kids. This is going to be really interesting because there's a battle going on between these demons and Jesus, and there's a battle going on between this guy who is hurting and broken and the demonic spirits that he's wrestling. Because in verse 6, now it kind of backs up a little bit. Now it's going to get into the story for us. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran. He's running towards Jesus. That doesn't make sense if you know what's coming. This guy's tortured by demons, and he's running at Jesus, screaming, half naked, mostly naked, chains hanging off me. And maybe this is his way of like, get away from me, leave me alone. Or maybe this is his way of going for help. It says when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and, he fell down before him. And crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he was saying to him, "Come out of this man, you unclean spirit." Jesus had been saying, "Come out of this man, leave him alone, depart." Now, how many times do we read Jesus just walks up and commands a demon to leave and it leaves? We think, well, Jesus has ultimate authority and Jesus can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. And yet, even in this moment, Jesus has been telling these demons to leave this guy alone, and they're not. That there's going to be a battle, there's going to be a war here. This is a serious condition that's going to require even Jesus himself to do extra work other than just commanding this demon to leave. But hey, it's good to know that Jesus isn't afraid. He didn't get back in the boat. He didn't head out of town. He doesn't step back. Jesus is not afraid of demons. We don't need to be. And Jesus didn't see a freak running up to him on the beach. Jesus didn't say, "Get a load of this guy." He didn't see an outcast. He didn't see a problem. He saw a man who was being tortured. And he's going to stand his ground. See, when we buy into these lies, when we buy into the things that these spirits tell us, it's really hard to get free. You have to want to get free. And this guy's driving himself at Jesus. More than believing you want to get free, you have to be committed to getting free. There's a recognition of Jesus' authority. He says, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" That Son of the Most High God is a term that Gentiles use to describe Jesus. Non-Jews would use to describe God, the Most High God. Genesis chapter 4, Melchizedek blesses Abraham, refers to the Most High God. Balaam in Numbers 24, when he's supposed to be cursing the Israelites and he blesses them, he refers to the Most High God. The Philistines in 1 Samuel 14 refer to the Most High God. King Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel refers to the Most High God. And Jonah on the boat during the storm, where they wake him up and they say, "Would you start praying to your God?" And Jonah says, "Well, I serve the God that created everything." The Most High God? You got that God mad, you idiot? This term, Most High God, is the term that a non-Jew would use for God. He says, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Don't torment me." Does Jesus torment people? We're going to go like this. Well, why did this guy say this? You're going to notice pronouns are going to shift back and forth from I and we. And sometimes you're going to hear the guy talking, and sometimes you're going to hear him almost reporting what he's hearing in his head. Sometimes you're going to hear spirits talking. It's going to get confusing. But this guy is saying, don't torment me, because he believes a lie. That Jesus can't help. Jesus comes to judge, condemn, and victimize. Now, to some of you, this seems ridiculous. But somebody feels this. That they're judged. That they're being condemned. Jesus doesn't say, what's wrong with you? Why don't you put some clothes on? Why don't you stop acting like an idiot? But this guy comes and says, don't torment me. This guy believes some things that aren't true. They believe that Jesus has nothing good for me. Yeah, I could go to church. Yeah, I could read my Bible, but I know what it says. It says I'm a terrible sinner, and I have to give up everything that I like about myself, and I have to conform to a religious version of who my grandmother was. That's not what my Bible says. My Bible says I am made righteous by the sacrifice of Christ. Jesus only has good for me. He only has good for me. But we hear these lies. Leave me alone. Don't torment me. But there's a recognition of Jesus' authority. He's the Son of the Most High God, and there's a submission to Jesus' authority. Jesus says, what's your name? And he replied, don't ask me my name. I don't have to answer to you. There's already a submission. But in that submission, there's this little bit of show of force. My name is Legion, for we are many. Legion was a Roman term for like 5,000 soldiers. There's a little bit of arrogance here. But there's a little bit of, maybe I'm too far gone. My demons are too much for Jesus. He's outnumbered. He's outmatched. There's a show of force, and there's this confession of, I don't know if you can help me. Jesus isn't backing down. He's not afraid at all. Verse 10, and he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Somebody needs a grammar class. He, the man, begged him, Jesus, earnestly not to send them, the demons that are roughly 5,000 inside this guy, out of the country. Now Luke says not to send them into the abyss. It's just don't send us there, let us stay here. It's not like they have something special about this territory, this town they're in. But the man is begging for the demons. Maybe he's hearing from them. Maybe they're speaking through him. But they don't want to get sent where they know they're going. See, 2 Peter chapter 2 says, for if God did not spare angels even when they sinned, referring to the demons who fell from heaven, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until judgment. That's where they're going. Some of them have been there, and they don't want to go back. I don't know what cartoons you grew up watching, but the devil and the demons don't rule and reign in hell. They're not like hosting the party, poking people with a pitchfork. It's no fun for them either. And what these demons are saying is, please don't send us from here. Don't send us to there yet. Well, that's submission to authority. They're recognizing that Jesus can. Now a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. And they begged him. Now they are speaking. It's probably still his voice. They begged him, saying, send us to the pigs. Let us enter them. Wait, so animals can have a demon? Well, that explains cats. That makes sense. I'm tracking. Send us into the pigs and let us enter them. They're looking for some sort of parasitic host. They want to live off some other life. So Jesus gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out, entered the pigs, and the herd, numbering 2,000, so when he said legion, he wasn't kidding. There was a lot going on in this guy. This guy had been this way for a long time. 2,000 pigs rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the sea. If you want to get free, it's all about authority. Recognition of Jesus' authority, submission to Jesus' authority, and surrendering of all of our own authority. As the pronouns are going back and forth, as it's I and me and them, this guy's just kind of reporting what he's hearing. He's not worried about saving face. He's fighting. He's fighting. When I say he's fighting with Jesus, he's not fighting against Jesus. He's trying to get on Jesus' side to get free. Matthew and Luke tell us that the herdsmen from the pigs were close enough to hear the conversation. So that means these guys got their pigs out and they see a boat coming in. I'm like, hey, do you see where that boat's headed? It's headed over by the cemetery. Oh man, Crazy Willie's going to be all over them. Oh, here he comes. I can see him screaming. He's running right for him. They're going to jump back in their boat and they're going to get out of here. But they don't. And these guys are close enough that they can hear the conversation that's being had. This guy's trying to get free. This other guy's giving permission for demons to go into our pigs. That's absolutely ridiculous. Pigs start screeching. Next thing you know, pigs start diving over the hill. You know how much money they lost? All their money. All their money. They're financially wrecked. The herdsmen fled and told it in the city and the country. I don't know who this guy is, but we need to get rid of him because all my pigs are dead. They're floating in the Sea of Galilee. And people came to see what it was that had happened. Can pigs swim? Anybody know? I didn't even Google it. I don't even care. These ones are dead. There's probably pig carcasses floating up on shore. This is a mess. And they came to Jesus and they saw the demon-possessed man, the one who had had the legion, sitting there clothed in his right mind. Well, that's weird. He's not normally dressed. He's not normally acting normal. And they were afraid. And those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and the pig. Jesus sets people free from lies about mental illness. He was sitting there in his right mind. We're just convinced that everybody who acts differently, well, their brain's broken. And we'll just give them a little more of this chemical, we'll give them a little more of that chemical, and that'll solve their problem. But I don't know anybody whose problems get solved that way. I know people who get set free. Listen, I'm not an anti-doctor guy. But at some point, you might want to recognize popping a pill every day to feel numb is not what God has for you. It's not what he wants for you. All the cutting, the screaming, the running around naked, stopped. He's not being lied to. He's not being tortured. He's calm. And they began to beg Jesus to depart from their region. There's a cost to seeing people set free. These guys just lost all their money. And that was too much to pay for one guy. It's not worth it. Just leave him chained up naked in the cemetery. Who cares? He's a freak. Guy can't control himself. He acts like an idiot. What if it costs us too much for Jesus to set others free? How much are we willing to give up? Because it is easier to keep people chained up and medicated and excluded from our lives and excluded from society and keep them marginalized. And now, the lesson in the story is not pay whatever price to allow whatever demon to torture and lie to whoever you love. That's enabling. The point here is to get him to stand in front of Jesus, to get him to fight for freedom. Jesus, would you put yourself in front of my dad? Would you get a hold of my kids? Lord, would you stand before me and point out the lies that I believe about my own soul? Jesus sets people free to tell others how to get free. See, because as Jesus is getting back into the boat, because they're telling him they don't want him here, and that's fine, he's not going to stay where he's not welcome. The man who had been possessed with the demons begged him that he might be with him. Well, take me with you, right? I'll do anything you want. You need a sailor, you need someone to row, you need someone to get your lunch, you need a secretary, I'll go with you. But Jesus did not permit him and said to him, go home to your friends. Tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he's had mercy on you. He went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis, Decapolis, 10 cities that the non-Jewish believing people lived in up in that area, to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. You see, your testimony is your responsibility. And Jesus had compassion even on the people who said, get out of here, we don't want you around here. He left that guy there as evidence, as testimony. You who have been set free, you who believed some of these lies and now you're walking in freedom, your testimony is your responsibility to help someone else break these lies. Because here's what I don't need. I don't need some 120-pound guy who's never weighed more than 120 pounds telling me how to lose weight. Not interested, Skinny Timmy. I want a guy that was 500 pounds that's now $180. I'm very interested in what he did. I don't need somebody who had a loving father telling me how I need to forgive my dad. What would you know about it? I want a guy whose dad was worse than my dad, who now has a relationship with his dad. I want that guy. Like, how'd you get here? How'd you get past that? Nancy Reagan's Just Say No campaign may have kept some kids off drugs, but it didn't do anything for an addict. A guy who was already addicted to drugs didn't need to hear just say no. Oh, okay. Your testimony is your responsibility. And those of you who have been set free from these lies, it's your responsibility to recognize those lies in others and go to them and say, I used to think the same thing. I used to struggle the same way. I used to battle that same addiction. I used to believe that same lie. I used to hold on to that same pain. And Jesus has set me free. Because too many people believe this lie. It's just going to be like this. This is who I am, and it's never going to get better. My dad was like this, and his dad was like this. This is kind of my cross to bear. That is not. The cross was born for you. Never going to get free. Jesus came to set captives free. And there are people in this room who've been set free. And if Jesus was faithful to set people free then, he'll set people free now. He doesn't condemn. Jesus doesn't say, what's the matter with you? Go get dressed. Stop yelling at me. Quit acting a fool. Jesus saw a guy who was tortured and hurting and had been lied to. And Jesus set him free. The guy was deceived. And he walked off that beach, set free. Listen, if you want to be set free, you're going to have to recognize the demonic lies that you've been holding on to, that you've been buying into. If you want someone to pray with you, we're going to do that after church. I'll be up front. The elders will be here. We can have a confidential conversation. We can talk. There's a lot of people who've been set free from a lot of stuff in this room. I think there are a lot of stories that might help you. Let's pray.